So, Mr. Liu, if you will recall, in 1990, the world was introduced to Total Recall, catching Arnold Schwarzenegger at the height of Arnold Schwarzeneggerism before he became a governor. This movie came out right between everything was practical effects and when special effects were starting to become more digitized. But this movie was still more practical than anything else. And over 30 years later, I still think this is one of the best sci-fi movies ever made. Let's judge it. Right. Um, so looking into it, they were originally trying to make this, I think, all the way back in the 70s, but realized that the technology wasn't there. So by the time we get to 1990, when I saw it in the theater as a 12-year-old at an age-appropriate time, um, this movie has always been one of my favorite Arnie movies. Um, Before I went to college, back when you could do this crap, I went to the video store and rented a bunch of movies and copied them onto a VHS tape. And this was one of the ones I did. So I've probably seen this movie 30 times in my life. The the iconic 2 weeks mask scene is one of my absolute favorite. Besides the three boobied woman. Um, so all that being said, I was pretty apprehensive when they announced they were going to be doing a remake of it. So in my mind, it's kind of like, is it a remake of? Are they remaking the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie? Are they doing a reboot to follow more closely with the novel? And honestly, in the end, I think they just made a sci-fi movie that didn't really have as much to do with either. Neither did I. I was like, I'll wait for it to come to Redbox. Ha. Um, so when I watched it, it like I said, if they had called it, you know, man gets his mind erased in the future, just some movie, like I think I would have judged it a little bit more fairly. But they called it Total Recall. They brought the three boobied woman back. And my very first thought, different woman. Yeah, could you imagine those 35-year-old? Ugh. Um, my first thought getting into it was they're going down an elevator shaft, and they did that weird thing where they switch sides. And I'm like, this is where the climactic battle of the movie is going to happen. And I was right. And it was like, this is foreshadowing because I'm not an idiot. Unlike the foreshadowing in the original movie, which was all very subtly done, very well done. Oh my god, yes. So, so when he first goes to Total Recall, they're asking him, the sales guy's asking him, "What do you wanna do? What do you want this?" And he asks, "Well, what about the spy package?" He's like, "Oh, you go to Mars, kill the bad guy, get the girl, save the world." That's literally what happens in sequence. Um, when they're loading him into the machine, and the guy's like, "Oh, hey, blue sky on Mars. That's pretty weird," or something like that. When they're asking him to describe the girl of his dreams, like he literally describes the actress that plays it, and like the actress pops up on the screen. I mean, that's just like in the first 10 minutes of the movie, and it just goes on and on and on from there. Um, and a lot of it you don't realize until, it's done. One of my favorite scenes is, like, 3/4 of the way through when they send his wife back in as a ruse to try to talk him into taking the red pill, which the that's where the Matrix got it, right? Totally, totally stole it. Um, and they're trying to convince him that the doctor in there is not a real person, he's just like a memory insert in his mind, and he's trying to talk him into it, and he said, "If you don't take this, you'll get lost in your own mind, blah, 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 and the walls will come crashing down." And then he shoots him in the head, and the walls literally come crashing down right after that. I mean, the movie was just so well done, like, and it was all practical effects for the most part. Like, can you imagine doing prostheses on Arnold Schwarzenegger with his eyes fucking popping out of his head and shit? And, today, like, they would've, like, put a virtual mask on him and Arnold had to sit in the movie theater going, "Ah, ah, 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 ah." It's so good. You replaced Mars with Australia? What the hell? Yes. Oh, really? I think if they had not called it Total Recall, it would have been a really good movie, but they were banking on the nostalgia. That was not a really good movie. I thought it was a mediocre movie at best. Because of the title and because they set themselves up to be a to be compared to the original movie. Like, if like, do you know the movie The Sixth Day? Another Arnold Schwarzenegger classic from, I think, the early aughts, but it's basically kind of the same movie about a guy who gets cloned. I mean, it's like, is this the real me? And so it's very similar in concept to this movie, but they didn't call it Total Recall 2. It's its own movie. If they had separated themselves from that, like, they tried so hard to be the 1990 movie, but also be their own thing, they failed at both. It I disagree because I think I think if you ask 10 different people what they thought the ending of the original one meant, you'd get 2 or 3 different answers. It was all a dream, he was lobotomized, he really did go to Mars, he really did create an atmosphere in 30 minutes. Actually, not even like 2 minutes, he created a whole atmosphere, and, and then all of a sudden, there's blue skies on Mars, and that really happened. In my opinion, he was lobotomized, but that's just my opinion. Right. You can dream about things that you're not in. You can dream about being a fly on a wall. Right, but his brain crashed, so he's making up the story for himself to create that logical flow in his own mind. Yeah, and then another great one going to this exact topic, the so in the original movie, they send the little bald doctor in there to get him to take the pill, which I'm guessing is a suicide pill, um, and they just send him in alone, unarmed. He's like, "You have to take this pill or your mind's gonna be lobotomized," whatever, and he sees him sweat, and that makes him think it's real. And a lot of people argue that, well, you really can't sweat in a dream, but if it's your own mind, you can make whatever happen happen. You can make a blue sky happen. But the scene was so much more it was so better done because it was just the guy in there alone. He's like, "Hey, I'm not a threat, buddy. I'm here to help you." And the sequel, they're surrounded by an army of people. And it's like, why don't they just lasso him with their electric laser thing, if it's real? Just laser lasso the two of them and get them out of there and do whatever they got to do to end it. Like again, it's just the second one is just a it's just a like a practical sci-fi movie. Not necessarily. I think, and this is I'm going to get a little controversial on you for a second. I think Dune 1984 is a fantastic movie. I think the remake is 10 times better. So I can think sequels are fantastic if they're well done. Dune was well done. This movie was lackluster. Like the special effects are great, but a lot of movies these days just give you crap content that fill it up with great special effects and hope you don't notice. No, but it's on the endless list of crap I gotta read. Well, I can say I won't, only because I know from looking into this that the 2012 movie went even further away from the book. Um, I've watched Dune 1984 probably 10 times before I ever read the book. Um, and I enjoyed both of them. If I had read the if I was 20 years older than I am, I might be as scornful as a lot of people are towards the 1984 Dune. But the fact that I read it or watched it and then read it, I still thoroughly love the '84 Dune. Um, so it had enough of the elements of the book that I think you could call it a Dune movie. They had the Kwisatz Haderach, they had the Sandworms, they had the Fremen, they had Gurney and Duncan and all that. Um, I can't say for sure if the only thing I really know is that in the Philip K. Dick book, his name was Douglas Quayle, not Douglas Quaid. But back in the 90s, Arnold Schwarzenegger was like, "I am not called Quayle." Um, and he was also like a bookkeeper or something, and, Arnie's in it, so they gotta make him into because Arnie has to carry something heavy in every movie. Um, but I don't think that the 2012 recall took anything from either of them. Like, they tried to jump on the nostalgia bandwagon to get you to remember the 1990 Dune, or Dune on the brain, Recall. Um, but I think they did it poorly, and I don't know. I think if they had tried to make their own movie instead of the changes they made, it could have been a good movie. But they set up the expectation, not me. No, I went into it thinking, I hope we get an update on the three-breasted woman. Um, and I just want to see I was really curious to see like how they redid the Mars scenes with like science has advanced a lot since, the 90s, of course. So we know that if you go outside on Mars is not what Total Recall, it's not what it looks like. Like that's not reality. Like I wonder like if they were going to try to redo update like the reality of it a little bit. Maybe I was hoping like they would tie in a little bit more physics of like the releasing the oxygen. Like now it's a start or, um I was I was cautiously optimistic going into it. Colin Farrell is a phenomenal actor. Jessica Biel is a fantastic actor. Um, what's Grant? Yeah. Um, and casting against role or against type, bad guy. It took him 8 seasons of Breaking Bad to turn Bryan Cranston into a bad guy. They did it in 2 hours. Um, what's her name? Kate Beckinsale is. I've loved her since. Um, oh, the vampire movie. Brain's not working today. Um, yeah, and she's just she's a good actress. She's gorgeous. She brings Underworld. Yeah, she brings like she switches between her American and her English accent, and like you can see the personality change when she changes her voice. Like she is such a good actress, and I mean, she did the best with what she had. I think the individual people played their roles extremely well. I just don't think it was I don't put any blame onto the actors in the movie. I think it was just a bad script and a bad plot. Yeah, I mean, it was a good take on it, like biochemistry. I thought that was pretty neat. Um, I will say one of my absolute favorite parts, and I actually did a double take for it, was the scene where he's trying to escape back to Britain, and he's got like the CGI head, like the hologram head graphic thing on, and they show the fat woman and like, how long were you staying? And she goes, 2 weeks. I was like, really? I was like, I can't believe they're actually going to do this again. And then like, are you bringing any fruits or vegetables? And she says no. I was like I total subversion of expectation. I loved it. Mhm. Yeah. That to me, that was the best part of the whole movie. Um, just that was a well done scene. Yeah, and li oh my god, she did so much. Um, and, and that brings me back to, like, so comparisons. That was a well done scene. That was paying homage, but it was its own thing, and it was so well done. And then you take a look at the ending. So this movie ends where he kills the president and blows up the elevator with evil army robots in it. And they're like, "Yay, we've won!" So what's to say they're not just gonna build another army and fly it on a plane around the world? Like, what did they actually win? It'd take longer, but not necessarily any harder. I mean, the original movie, no, but whether or not you say that it was a dream or it was real, regardless, they changed the planet, man. Like the rebels won. Like they killed the head of the corporation. They literally terraformed a new planet. Like they're not beholden to any corporation to give them oxygen anymore. This was just like, oh, it'll just take them longer to get here and kill all of us because we still don't have the technology to build any robots. The action scenes were good. I will say that the special effects were fantastic. Um, but for me, a little bit at least, it was kind of dimmed down a little bit just because, like, I knew it was going to happen. They're going to be on the train. It's going to be a pivotal moment. He's going to do something. The world's going to flip upside down, and then they're going to run away jauntily to win. I mean, I like that. They when they did change away from the belly mutant, like the father daughter thing, that was pretty good. Um, and then there's another good, I will say, type cast change. Um, the father, Bill Nighy, I think, um, usually plays evil men and freaks and like weird guys, and this time he's like the good guy, the father. In Underworld, Kate Beckinsale was his daughter as well. Correct. I judge it poorly. Wow. We're totally on opposite sides of the page on that one. Okay, just okay. If for no other reason, the original movie had the classic Arnold quotes in it, like the quips, like he rips the guy's arms off. And he's like, "Hey, kid, I'll see you at the party." He shoots his wife in the head. And is like, "Consider that a divorce." This movie just took itself so seriously, or like it didn't have like Benny. Man, I got 5 kids to feed. Like even when he died, it was kind of funny. Like the midget sex worker and like the original movie, like it was. it had serious parts and it had funny parts, and it blended them well together. I mean, it wasn't serious. I mean, it wasn't like, it wasn't like Lord of the Rings glad you were like, oh my goodness, like so serious. But it had serious parts and it had humor and a little bit of slapstick in there. And this, like the 2012 one, I mean, it was like a almost a cookie cutter sci-fi movie. And I don't know. I can't give it any good ratings for that. Okay. Liam Neeson. Yeah. Oh no. Well, I think you could, but first of all, you cannot make an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie without Arnold Schwarzenegger. And Commando, uh, Total Recall, um, Twins, um, all those classic 80s and 90s Arnold movies, like, those movies exist solely to put Arnold Schwarzenegger on screen. You replace him with anybody else, the movie's a bomb. Like, you go not if they're trying to make it an Arnold movie. Like, no, think about a lot of those movies would not be high quality. They would not be perceived as well, excuse me, without Arnold Schwarzenegger in it, because you go into it expecting Arnold Schwarzenegger to do Schwarzenegger. Have a weird accent, flex his muscles as often as he can, um, and be the epic hero and always win. So if there's if the movie is not as strong story wise, it's almost more forgivable when it's an Arnie movie because that's what you're expecting. And when you take Arnold out of it and you replace, I mean, I can't think of any other actor that can play Arnold, including CGI Arnold in the Terminator remakes. Um, it doesn't hit the same. And I don't think this movie would have been. I don't know if it was a hit in the theaters. I assume it did okay because they didn't spend $190 million on movies back then, so they didn't have to make as much to recoup their costs. But it's kind of like, I don't want to say a cult classic, but people still watch it and talk about it, and like it's in the zeitgeist, like the 2 weeks meme and like the three boobies and like people who have never seen the movie know some of that stuff. And I think if you take Arnold out of that, you don't get that. Whereas with this movie, I think you could recast Colin Farrell with a dozen other actors, and the movie would not be any better or worse. If they're trying to, if they're trying to do a shot for shot remake, yes. If they're trying to take a source novel, which again I admit I haven't read, and make that, then no, I would not be against it because I think it would be a completely different movie. This movie was trying to cash in on your nostalgia for the 1990 movie. No, I mean, like, with their but, like, because they called it Total Recall, but it had nothing to do with the original Total it had very little to do with the original Total Recall. They changed the planets, they changed some of the plot points, they threw in just enough of the barely enough of the original scenes from the original movie that you could be like, "Oh, yeah, I remember that. Oh, look, the 2 weeks lady." But otherwise, it was just a terrible I don't I mean, as a remake, it's terrible. As a standalone movie, I think if they'd gone their own way, they could have I would have judged it a little bit better, but like I said earlier, they decided to try to compare it to Total Recall, and I think side by side, it just falls way short. Again, I think it depends on how they do it. I don't know how you could ever make a movie like Commando in 2026. I mean, at one point, he was throwing saw blades at guys in that movie, and it was epic. I mean, I think the movies of the '80s could only be made in the '80s. It was a completely different same thing, I mean, I think a lot of decades are like that, you know? Some movies can, like, The Godfather will be classic forever, and I don't think and, God, I hope they don't ever remake it. Um, like like, The Dirty Dozen and, um, Commando and, like, all those movies that they were made for their time, in their time, and modern audiences don't need them. Like, they've got the original. I mean, you look at a company like Disney who's doing live action of all of their classic, like from the what did they call the '90s Disney? It was it the golden age or the rebirth age or something like that? Like they called like all the like the Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin. Like they had it was like their like rebirth age in the '90s. Um, they're remaking them, they're calling them live action, but they're like 70% CGI. So how live action is that? Um, and they're good, but I don't think they're better than the original cartoons. Um, no, the point of those is be like, "Hey, remember Aladdin? Give me more money." I mean, they're not telling anything new. Like, they're not like, they're doing almost shot for shot remakes. Oh, that's let's not go down that road. I just I don't know. Like I said, it was entertaining, but, you know, that's just my opinion. I'm I'm very, very hit or miss on remakes. Um, if you have something to tell and you think you can improve upon the original, or not even improve upon it, but tell it from a different story, or like from a different point of view, or a slightly different angle, like I get it. But if you're not going to really change anything, you're telling me the exact same story, and all you're doing is adding an extra song in, or in this case, like trying to make your own thing, but hoping everybody remembers the original, like, "Oh, yeah, let's go watch that because I remember I liked the first one." It just it doesn't hit for me, and, some movies just shouldn't be remade. Star Wars, Star Trek: The Motion Picture. No, I'm talking just the Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Like, that movie doesn't need to be remade, that movie is fantastic on its own. Um it's fine to continue things. I have no I thought the new Star Trek movies did it brilliantly. I wish they had made more of those. I like how they paid enough homage to the original show and movies um, but they didn't try to change them for anything. They didn't, try to update it for, like what people might think now. Like Captain Kirk was great. Chris Pine as Captain Kirk was fantastic. Um, Carl Urban as Bones was freaking great. And like they took the original, like they built upon it, they recognized it for what it was, and they changed everything in just enough of a way that they made it their own without pissing the audience off. And those like, I mean, are those remakes? Like, is the new Star Trek a remake or is that like a continuation? Okay, I like that. And they did it extreme the casting, every character in that movie was the first couple was brilliantly casted. Um, Ahura, Chekhov, like, I love that when the actor that played Chekhov, I can't remember his name, he died. It was either right before or right at the beginning of filming of, I think, the second one, and they kind of wrote that into the movie and were like, "We're not gonna replace this guy." Like, they were just done so well. Like, it was CGI heavy, but it wasn't a distraction. Um, you know, some of the plot points were a little, I don't know, but I didn't care because I was so absorbed into the movie. And like that is an example of a great continuation, reboot, whatever you want to call it. I thought it was brilliant. And I'm a Star Wars guy, um, through and through. And I've always enjoyed Star Trek. Um, and when they started remaking those, I was like, oh, I don't know. I mean, like William Shatner he's like Arnold Schwarzenegger. You don't replace him. And they didn't. Like they did it in such a way that it worked for me. So I am not opposed to whatever you want to call it, like the exact title of it is. Um, but it's got to be done well, and it's got to be a good story. And and this just fell well short of that. Brian no likey. I think we should continue on with the Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I think next time we do Running Man, another one of my all-time favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger movies and 80s movies. Perfect. We'll do that next. And to drop a famous quote, "I'll be back." Yeah.